I was driving the other day and happened to notice some things, and it got me to thinking about what others might pay attention to and notice. Like, do other people notice the increase in year-round traffic around here? Like people who slow way down when they cross a bridge or pass a guardrail? Do other people notice the trash that someone dumped on the side of the road? Do they notice so many out-of-state license plates? Do they ask themselves why so many are escaping those progressive crap holes in record numbers and moving here? Have they noticed that Facebook has become a politicized, slanted rumor mill? Do they notice that they're holding up the line at the store when they wait for a total before even taking out their checkbook to start filling it out? If people paid more attention, would they notice that gas prices have skyrocketed since Inauguration Day? Welcome to Biden's America. Do they notice that when someone questions the narrative of COVID, they're automatically called a Trumper, a conspiracy theorist, or QAnon? Would they notice the manipulation and control using fear? If more people paid attention, would they remember who caused this pandemic? Would they notice just how many coincidences all add up to not being a coincidence? Would they notice the media promoting Biden's record-high tax hike as anything but a record-high tax hike? If more people paid attention, would they actually read reports the biased media misinterprets? Do they count just how many times Fauci is wrong? Do they notice the line of 25 cars all tailgating them? Do they notice the same people who say we shouldn't put people in groups based on their identity do nothing but put people in groups based on their identity? Do they notice a certain political party pandering to those groups? Do they notice that when they run out of groups to pander to, they create more? Did they pay attention to who all spoke at the last World Economic Summit and what they said? Do they notice that many people are trusting a computer programmer with medical advice? Would they notice that advice has now been turned into requirement? Did they notice that our fearless leaders paid no attention to the successful inventor and philanthropist when he warned them of the dangers of AI? Do they notice our immigration laws were proposed, promoted, and passed by the same people who are suddenly against them? Did they notice that the Communist 45 goals, as read into the congressional record in 1963, have all been achieved and were pushed, proposed, or passed by the same major political party that supports their same ideologies? Do they notice when a party accuses their opposition of election fraud, they insist you take it seriously, even without evidence? And if people paid more attention, would they see that the same party tells us not to pay attention to evidence showing their election fraud? Do they notice the pattern of bias in the media? Do they notice a lopsided faculty at universities? Have they paid attention enough to notice Communist China's infiltration of those same institutions? Do they notice the direct connection between misguided, unqualified instructors and testing scores dropping? Do people notice the lack of original ideas coming out of Hollywood? Do they notice all the reboots, remakes, and remixes? Do they notice the projection by the same party accusing others of it? Would people notice that those who criticize you probably have self-worth issues? Do they notice that stupidity is in the majority and common sense is the minority? If more people paid attention, would they remember that asking questions outside the narrative isn't hate speech? Would they see that the media makes small hate groups bigger? Would they notice that if Caucasians did things that other ethnic groups are doing, the toxic complainers would have a problem? Would people realize that's not equal? Do they notice that those same people have masqueraded equity as equality? Do they notice that those pro-socialist, pro-communist morons don't simply move to socialist countries and live happily ever after? Have they paid attention to just how easily dumb people have been duped into supporting the ideologies our founders warned us about? Do they notice the dumbing down of the country, which is why things like socialism are even in the conversation? Do they notice that proven failures are still proposed? Which reminds me, if people paid more attention, would they see that trophies for all is just a conditioning mechanism for equal outcome? Would they notice when certain ethnicities riot, it's called activism, but when I do it, it's terrorism? If more people paid attention, would they notice that people who complain about unconscious bias can't identify any specifically? Do they see that those undercover anti-Americans keep changing the goalpost? If more people paid attention, would they be upset by the election fraud that the media refuses to investigate and cover? Would they see our media and social networks manipulating so many people? Would they understand why these government requirements are not a part of American law on any level? Would they remember that Abe Lincoln was the first Republican? Would they notice a lot of similarities between Communist China and one of our major political parties? Would they notice that we don't have quite the illegal immigration problem at our borders to the north as we do to the south? If more people paid attention, would they understand why? If more people paid attention, would there be as many scams occurring online, on your front porch, or on the 6 o'clock news? Would they see why mental health is such a problem in America? And if more people paid attention, would they stop blaming inanimate objects for things that humans choose to do with them? If more people paid attention, would they see these self-described fact-checked websites that are funded by Google and Facebook for what they really are? Would they know the difference between bias, prejudice, and racism? Would they notice when journalists are inserting opinion as fact? Would they notice that the massive American companies that are considered vital hire out of the country at very cheaper wages? Would they figure out that most of our problems have to do with a lack of personal responsibility? Would they notice we get higher taxes and a higher homeless count when a certain political party's in office? Would they figure out that just because someone's accused of something doesn't make it fact? Would they notice that un-American ideologies are being pushed as American ideologies? If more people paid attention, would they notice that there's a direct assault against our nation by people who say they're doing these things to make our country better, and those responsible are banking on people not paying attention to forward their agenda? Would they see who the true villains are in our country? Would they see that some people just want to see our country burn? If more people paid attention, maybe they would notice manipulation on people who don't pay attention. Would they notice that there have been no arrests in the Epstein case? People who pay attention know exactly why. Would they understand that our country's founders warned us against the exact things going on now and being pushed by a specific political party while they blame their opposition? Would they comprehend the toxic party's own words? Would they realize who the bad people really are? If more people paid attention, would we be in this state of turmoil? If more people paid attention, you think they'd notice all this stuff? Or would they just not care? That's just all conspiracy stuff. That's not what the news says. I think if more people paid attention, they'd be embarrassed that they fell for the things that they've fallen for. I'm certainly embarrassed for them. But if you keep your head buried in the sand, I guess you don't have to worry about it. I don't know. Just call it how I see it.